Picture a doorway locked tight by the divine touch, shaking from the force of a desperate world trying to force its way inside. What secrets were hidden within Noah's Ark that required heavenly protection? This isn't the familiar narrative you heard, a mere vessel carrying animals through a storm. It's an account of a refuge besieged, where each groan of wood and each lurking shadow concealed a mystery too forbidden to utter. Are you prepared to reveal the true events that unfolded behind those barriers? What if the gravest transgression occurred not prior to the deluge, but within the ark's confines? Who was banging on the locked entrance as celestial beings kept watch? And why did the Almighty refuse them entry? You've never been informed about what scratched at that barrier, or what nearly penetrated it. Obscure writings murmur of a protected gateway, flames at the portal, a colossal being who defied the waters, and a wrongdoing too unspeakable to voice. This isn't a bedtime story of creatures entering two by two. It's a narrative of a stronghold enduring assault, a haven secured by the Creator's direct intervention, where each passing day felt like divine reckoning. What truly transpired inside Noah's Ark? What was confined in those wooden planks? And why was it barricaded by the heavens? Remain engaged, for when this chamber unlocks, your perspective will be forever altered. The directive was straightforward. Construct an ark from gopher wood, complete with compartments, 3 levels tall, coated in pitch. Gen 6:14-16. Noah complied, assembling beasts, provisions, and his kin, as the land beyond raged with brutality. The narrative halts at a pivotal moment, and the Lord shut him in. Gen 7:16. It doesn't state that Noah secured the door. It declares that God personally sealed it. That single line transforms the tale. What sort of portal demands the Creator's own intervention to lock? This wasn't a mere getaway expedition. It was a fortified repository, protected and scheduled by the divine realm. At that instant, the entrance became a sacred boundary, a demarcation etched by God's authority, dividing condemnation from assurance, the doomed from the safeguarded. Darkness descended on the initial day. Beyond, feet thundered against the structure. Figures crashed into the portal, followed by quiet. Can you sense the terror in that lull when all external noise ceased, leaving only the respiration within? The atmosphere inside vibrated as an elephant adjusted its stance. Cords stretched taut and lanterns cast unsteady light on the wooden surfaces. Noah's fingers shook while he stabilized a light, its radiance highlighting a solitary plume embedded in a plank, an element poised for its upcoming roll. The ark had risen, and the onslaught commenced. Genesis documents the initial indicators: 7 days of anticipation while the creatures boarded, then 40 days of relentless downpour, torrents hammering ceaselessly. The scripture notes, the waters triumphed, and all life beyond perished. Gen 7:21, yet within, existence crammed into one area. Day 1, the battering entrance. Day 7, the final screams diminishing. Day 40, the earth obliterated. The ark wandered, not like a navigated vessel, but as a locked asylum, its path dictated by retribution. Nearby ancient cultures shared inundation legends too. In the Atrahasis epic, deities freak out over the flood, hiding from their own tempest. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, a godly caprice submerges mankind without ethical justification. The scriptures oppose this array. Genesis portrays the deluge not as whimsy, but as retribution for depravity and the safeguarding of the sacred pact. This distinction is crucial as it explains the ark's meticulous depiction. It wasn't crafted to withstand randomness. It was designed to protect the vow. So why does the account provide such exactness, down to specific days and months? Within, every noise held significance. Beams creaked beneath the flood's force. Livestock moved during nocturnal storms. Young ones huddled near their parent. Noah sensed the resin solidifying on his hands as he inspected the joints. the odor pungent and dense in his breath. The ark served as a pressurized enclosure, vibrant with the inhalations of beings and the burden of invisible sentinels at the gate. The narrative is exploratory by nature. The text supplies durations, gaps, indicators, suggesting the enigma lies in the timer itself. 40 days specified, then 150, then the 17th of the 7th month, then the 10th month. Each figure unlocks something. Each phrase forms a puzzle piece. The ark isn't merely about perseverance. It's a timer set by divine will, counting down to disclosure. And the initial tick occurs here. The portal locked, the floods ascending, the ark elevated over the devastation. So what implies that the heavens placed its own force against the structure as the world scratched for access? The entrance is barred. The timer activates. The deluge isn't narrated as a vague span of months. Genesis timestamps it with a schedule. It specifies dates, spacings, precise months, as though each numeral bears importance. Interpreting them is like detecting a concealed timer resounding inside the ark, each tone matched with escalating tension within. Why does Genesis emphasize the timeline whatsoever? 40 days the precipitation cascaded. With the tempest's conclusion came a change. Externally, the hammering stopped. Internally, the quietude weighed more than the clamor. The timber no longer vibrated from collisions, but from the agitation of confined creatures. A pivot squeaked. A line broke. A single lion bellowed deep into the night, its reverberation disrupting rest. Noah braced against the support, regulating his respiration, arms sore from effort. The ark didn't settle with the rainfall. It rose and fell like a torso unable to release breath. Then 150 days. The scripture states the waters dominated the land. Gen 7:24. For 5 months, the ark bobbed, no terrain visible. Weariness intensified. Rations of grain diminished. Irritations grew in the dimness. Internal stress mounted as reliably as the external surges. Can you envision residing in that enclosure when even stillness oppressed more than gales? This marked the peak of frailty, when the form craved calm, but the vista provided none. On the 17th day of the 7th month, the account delivers an abrupt highlight. The ark settled on the peaks of Ararat. Gen 8:4. Ease likely flooded the craft as the angle stabilized, planks scraping rock. But optimism exacted a price. Bitterness emerged as swiftly as delight. A grounded ark didn't equate to liberation yet. They remained enclosed. The assurance of soil heightened the pain of delay. The 10th month came. Summits emerged. Gen 8:5. A delicate calm settled. Beasts quieted as illumination seeped via the narrow opening. Noah unlatched it, and for the first time in ages, external breeze contacted the interior. The action exceeded mere sustenance. It was a regulated release of anxiety and aspiration. A clerical deed of dispatching exhalation skyward. Here, the ark starts to operate as a holy place, where even unlatching a pain turns into ceremony. Duration tracked, air expelled, existence arranged before the divine. Then the crow, agitated, orbiting without comeback. After 7 days, the pigeon. It returned, flaps echoing in the stillness, as if duration was gauged by that resonance. Another 7 days, the pigeon once more, now bearing an olive branch. Gen 8:11. So, what message does the olive branch convey? That harmony was restoring. The cosmos unlocking its gateways anew. Then another 7 days, and the pigeon stayed away. Each gap descended like a rite. 7 days. 7 days. 7 days. The ark's isolation throbbed with patterns that future Israel would recognize in designated periods and offerings. The tempo of devotion was planted in this anticipation. Do you perceive the text's communication? The indicators aren't extraneous facts. They form the framework of resilience, embedded in days and weeks. Each temporal shift reveals another stratum of the blockade, another trial of belief. The crow's non-appearance, the pigeon's foliage, the quiet of its ultimate journey. Each element indicates the ark wasn't aimlessly floating. It was propelled by intention, even as the inhabitants faltered under the load. The dates aren't embellishment. They are an encryption. And the pigeon's voyage is its initial unveiling. The text indicates the ark featured 3 levels: a bottom, a middle, and a top. Gen 6:16. Initially, this appears as basic construction. But the framework communicates. 3 tiers ascending, each organized. Kin atop, pure beasts midway, impure beneath. It resembles a mobile shrine, a sacred site buoyant on punitive floods. But suppose the ark exceeds mere endurance. Suppose its layout is ritualistic. The daily practices inside mirrored this beat. At dawn, Noah portioned liquid and seeds. Youngsters transported feed, their tiny palms grazing barley bags. Incense was ignited to balance the atmosphere, its vapor rising, masking rot and soothing animals. The motion resembled supplication, an ascending tribute in the semi-gloom. At twilight, the pattern repeated, Noah's palms darkened by resin, his tone fatigued yet firm as he recited directives. Duty at sunrise, duty at sunset. Sustenance evolved into ritual. The pure beasts bore extra significance. Genesis subsequently reveals Noah reserved the pure in groups of 7. Gen 7:2. These weren't solely for nourishment. They were saved for oblation upon the ark's reopening. Thus, the ark transported not just vitality for the morrow, but flames awaiting ignition. Essentially, the sacrificial site was prepped prior to the water's retreat. The ark contained not merely future existence, but divine tributes in repose. Even amid enclosure, adoration was stockpiled. The upper slit transcended ventilation. When Noah parted it to dispatch the pigeon, he also elevated the craft's focus. It was a managed portal linking terrestrial below to celestial above, akin to the slender curtain in the tent where aromas traversed to the sanctum. Every exhalation through it connected the drifting shrine to the firmament. Subsequent resonances affirm this motif. Israel's portable shrine traversed arid wastes with structured tempo. Consecrated area layered tributes dawn and dusk, flames and vapor linking ground to skies. Solomon's edifice replicated the rising layout, 3 segments guiding the devotee toward essence. Revelation's depiction of the regal chamber finalizes the ark with nested enclosures and perpetual praise before the enthroned amid the crystalline ocean. These aren't replicas of the ark, but they echo its tone. Holy construction has perpetually delineated sacred duration and area. Thus, the ark wasn't disorder internally. It was structure opposing downfall where the globe sank in savagery. The barred craft inhaled in calculated rhythm. Sunrise and sunset, seeds and vapor. The layout is vital. They claimed it was just a craft. Yet each fact implies refuge. A shrine wandering, cradling both pledged vitality and pledged oblation. Protected until the sacrificial blaze ascended once more. Within the ark, devotion stabilized duration. Sunrise and sunset provided cadence. But externally, quiet concealed another reality. The deluge didn't conclude the conflict. It relocated its arena. Subsequent writings depict it plainly. The titans from pre-deluge eras left wandering essences when their forms submerged. One Enoch labels them malevolent forces on the land, ravenous and displaced. Jubilees clarifies they assailed the animate, seeking hosts. Their brutality not eradicated, but unanchored. The deluge purified the soil of bodies, yet its tides teemed with releases from the deceased. The ark exceeded a haven from precipitation. It was a bastion amid ethereal assault. The guardians remained invisible. Three functions arise in scriptural and customary testimony. One pacified the creatures during surges of alarm, instilling serenity into hides and plumes to prevent disorder from shattering the craft. One guided durations and cycles, prompting Noah of the dates and gaps, sustaining heavenly tempo in the barred space. And one vigilated the portal, where external force was fiercest, maintaining the boundary no essence could breach. Genesis merely states, "And the Lord shut him in." Gen 7:16. That expression exceeds physicality. It denotes a barrier secured by essence. Do you recognize it? The portal wasn't wooden mechanics. It was a demarcation inscribed by the almighty midnight aboard the ark. Noah supplicated with his rear to the plank. A snarl escalated to a symphony. All beasts disturbed simultaneously until abrupt tranquility descended. It seemed an invisible palm had traversed them, calming each breath, silencing each talon. At the entrance, the timber appeared to contract, the resin moaning as if heated. Noah's utterances fell into the calm. His plea responded not vocally, but by an unyielding barrier. Jude 6 recalls celestial beings who abandoned their station, shackled in bonds. The scraping at the barrier wasn't symbolic. In 1 Enoch and Jubilees, it's identified as the tainted essences of Titans severed from their forms, adrift in the tides. 2 Peter 2-4 mirrors it, designating their confinement. These writings reflect the identical period. The deluge's retribution not solely on bodies, but on uprising in the ethereal domain. And if certain were restrained, others persisted. The evangelists later reveal them explicitly. Tainted essences wailing when faced by the light. Their genesis traces here, orbiting a craft bearing pledged vitality. At the pinnacle of depletion. After 150 days when mortal resilience unraveled, tradition presents another fact. Jubilees 10 documents Noah's entreaty for the essences to be confined, so his offspring could exist tranquilly. The reply was incomplete. Majority were subdued, but one called Mastema was allowed a portion, a segment retained to challenge and entice. This explains brutality's resurgence post-deluge. The blockade was repelled, not terminated. Thus, the ark was defended externally and internally. Creatures soothed, duration taught, portal barred. Beyond, tides churned with agitated tones. Within, kin persevered beneath the vigilance of unseen protectors. The deluge wasn't merely the condemnation of a realm. It was the stage of a vaster conflict. And its quietude was laden with essence. The ark contained more than beasts and stores. It housed kin compressed for a year. Each existence defined by persistence. Each soul examined in quietude. External essences orbited and guardians observed. Internally, the genuine rifts were personal. And here the account pivots inward. The supreme blockade wasn't at the entrance, but in the spirit. Noah shouldered the clerical burden. His days started with apportioning seeds. His evenings concluded with murmured supplications. His gaze edged crimson from insomniac patterns. His palms obscured by resin. When the sacrificial vapor ultimately ascended on solid soil, it wouldn't be simple tribute. It would be his rededication, evidence that his clerical role endured the ark's extended year. Can you perceive that burden? An individual bearing not just a craft, but the world's clerical order. Shem's fortitude was constancy. He proceeded within successors' forbearance, acquiring holy patterns even in isolation. He maintained allocations exact, lights replenished, duties allocated. Subsequent custom recalls him as the lineage via which the pact persisted. And here, his persona formed. He was the guardian of structure when quietude oppressed excessively. Japheth existed amid his siblings. He quelled arguments, cleaved wood for men's, uttered balanced calm when frustrations escalated. His disposition previewed the invocation Noah later bestowed. May the Almighty expand Japheth and let him reside in Shem's dwellings. Gen 9:27. He served as arbitrator in an area where arbitration meant endurance. Then Ham, his quietude distinct. Where Shem stabilized and Japheth connected, Ham's gaze dawdled, his pace languid, his mood agitated. Future eras conserve disturbing customs about him, pieces explaining the gloom post-deluge. Genesis notes an instance when Noah sowed a grapevine, imbibed, and reclined exposed. Ham observed, "The ensuing has been long contested." Certain scholarly tones assert he ridiculed his sire's bareness, a spectator's shame. Others propose emasculation, a savage deed to sever Noah's lineage. Others indicate maternal violation, an encroachment endangering pact sanctity. These interpretations surface in Genesis Rabbah and subsequent exegesis save to clarify why Noah's malediction targeted Canaan over Ham. Ham emerges as the axis of generational split in the very kin selected for the pact. Uprising secured a base. The ark didn't obliterate the conflict. It safeguarded both the assurance and the potential for resistance. Each is evaluated as exegesis, not assurance. Yet their variety discloses the disquiet surrounding Ham's part. Jubilees suggests another stratum, portraying Noah's mandate for restraint aboard the ark. Moderation even for wedded offspring, a phase of sanctity amid the blockade. Certain scholars linked Ham's subsequent deed to violating that moderation, a kernel of uprising planted in isolation. Nonetheless, the narrative is uniform. Ham positioned at the break where pact persistence encountered mortal frailty. A subdued vignette persists in recollection. Shem apportioning seeds with serene accuracy. Japheth inserting a support, limbs tense. Ham halting at the barred entrance, gazing at the ebony joint as if it beckoned, his mandible firm, then departing silently. Yet the quietude bore significance, a precursor to the deed that would erupt after the tides withdrew. Sanctity doesn't nullify craving or arrogance. It encircles them, curbs them, summons them to structure, but the potential for rupture endures. The ark was shielded from external fiends, but its authentic examination was in the internal spirits. The kin that emerged on arid soil bore assurance, but also obscurity. The pact would curb transgression, not eliminate it. Even in a craft barred by divine intervention, frailty strained the joints. Thus, the ark transported more than beings and pledged assurance. It transported the kernel of rupture itself. The ark aimed to conclude the era of uprising. Yet custom retains a piece that won't dissipate. It narrates a colossus who resisted submersion. Perk de Rabbi Eliezer, a subsequent scholarly origin, recounts how Og, ruler of Bashan during Moses' time, outlasted the deluge. The legend claims he adhered to the ark's flank, clutching a rung or support, defying the flood's verdict. Noah, per divine order, nourished him via an opening. He vowed allegiance, and for a year the colossus dangled on the craft's exterior, balanced between demise and salvation. This isn't holy writ. It's a gata, a custom formed ages later. Yet its endurance indicates something. The narrative maintains the kernel of uprising didn't conclude with the deluge. The authorized account doesn't mention Og until Deuteronomy. There his size is gauged by metal. His couch spanned 9 cubits. Deuteronomy 3:11, exceeding 13 feet. Numbers 13 remembers the scouts reporting Anakim, giant offspring still residing in Canaan. Joshua 12 catalogues Og's vanquishment as element of Israel's triumph, his domain extending over Bashan. The resonances merge. The giant lineage didn't disappear. They resurface as Repine and Anakim, barriers to Israel's pledged legacy. Pieces from the Book of Giants, a non-authorized Enochic writing, enhance the image. They portray the giants' dread before verdict, visions of ruin they couldn't evade. These remains demonstrate that in Hebraic recollection, the deluge didn't eradicate the conflict. It propelled it onward. The ark bore pledged vitality, but a mere grip of uprising persisted. Envision the Agatic recollection scene. Tempest mist assaulting resin. A outline affixed to the structure. A palm extending through a tiny gap to deliver sustenance to clutching digits, then withdrawing quietly. No battle of forces, solely the squeak of timber and the swirl of tides. The vision unnerves as it implies persistence. The repository intended to safeguard sanctity also testified to endurance that would subsequently oppose Israel in the territory. Verdict shattered the realm, not the conflict. The deluge sealed one epoch, but its repercussions echo through eras. Agat the Rung is myth, yet his metallic couch in Bashan is reality. Israel's colossi are listed with titles and settlements. The uprising lineage didn't submerge silently. They never disclosed the Ark wasn't solely a repository of pact. It was also the pivot where uprising succeeded in adhering, awaiting resurgence. The portal parted finally. After a year enclosed in planks, Noah descended onto purified soil. The initial resonance wasn't animal calls or tidal surge, but the grind of soil beneath steps, dense with fresh quietude. The realm scented of cinders and damp rock. Noah's primary deed was clerical. He erected a sacrificial site from raw stone, arranged timber atop, and selected from the pure beasts saved for this instant. Genesis states, Noah took of every clean animal and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Gen 8:20. Vapor ascended, twisting into the breeze that had borne odor and rumble for months. Now it bore devotion. Noah's fatigued palms, marked by resin, stabilized the blaze as his gaze rose. The individual who quivered through the deluge was rededicated as cleric over a renewed cosmos. The Almighty detected the tribute and proclaimed pact. Nevermore would he assail all animate beings thus. The cycles of duration, planting and reaping, chill and warmth, summer and winter, daylight and darkness would persist. Gen 8:22. A year of isolation had dismantled disorder, but pact now mended duration itself. Structure wasn't mortal creation. It was divine bestowal, reinstated post-verdict. Then the emblem. I have placed my bow in the clouds, the Almighty announced. And it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Gen 9:13. The spectrum wasn't a juvenile symbol. It was a majestic curve suspended over a tribunal, heaven's seat proclaiming clemency, enthroned above fury. The identical tides that engulfed savagery now supported a shelter of assurance. The ark was positioned in the firmament, aimed skyward from the land. As if the Almighty personally set aside the armament of verdict, Jubilee's supplements that duration was revitalized then. Celebrations of weeks and designated cycles reestablished. Subsequent writings would mirror this revitalization in Israel's observances, and the New Testament would perceive it anew. 1 Peter 3 connects the deluge to immersion, redemption via tides by pact assurance. Revelation finalizes the ark with the seat ringed by a spectrum. Revelation 4-3, heaven's ultimate enthronement emblem mirroring Noah's pact. The ark's odyssey concludes here with vapor and pact, not terror, but with an emblem extended across the firmament. The repository unlocked, the kernel safeguarded. Duration reset under assurance. The deluge has transpired, yet its motif lingers at the barrier. A barred entrance protected by essence. A pact elevated in vapor and illumination. An ark extended across the skies, not as decoration, but as ruling. What it represented then, it still proclaims now. Verdict curbed by clemency, chronicles tied to assurance. As in Noah's era, Jesus cautioned, so at the Son of Man's arrival. Matthew 24:37. The ark isn't mere recollection. It's reflection. A barrier endures, concealed yet critical, where sanctity maintains the demarcation and spirits are evaluated. Which flank will you occupy when the portal closes? The spectrum still suspends overhead, recalling that pact clemency stays accessible. Advance toward it now while the assurance communicates. Optimism hasn't receded. The arc has grounded, the portal is ajar, but its resonances persist. Noah's account isn't mere past, it's a reflection for our spirits, where pact and uprising still contend. The spectrum curves above, an emblem of clemency restraining verdict, but the barrier endures. Will you traverse it? Continue pursuing, continue inquiring, and allow this ancient narrative's murmurs to direct you to the concealed verity. Further enigmas lie ahead. Remain on this route and reveal them alongside us.